Have you ever wondered why some people seem to learn new skills incredibly fast, while others spend hours studying and barely make progress? It's a frustrating question. You sit down with the best intentions, you read the books, you watch the tutorials, you take the courses. You spend countless hours trying to improve, yet somehow, there's always that one person who appears to be moving 10 times faster than everyone else. And the strange part, they're not necessarily smarter, they're not studying longer, and they're definitely not working themselves to exhaustion every single day. So what's their secret? The answer might completely change the way you think about learning, because the biggest mistake most people make is believing that learning is about the amount of time you spend studying. It's not. Learning is about how your brain processes information. And once you understand how that process works, you can dramatically increase your learning speed without adding a single extra hour to your schedule. Think about it. If more study time automatically created better results, every college student pulling all-nighters would become a genius. But that's not what happens. In fact, research consistently shows that after a certain point, more hours often produce worse results. Your attention drops, your memory weakens, your focus disappears, and your brain starts treating information like background noise. Yet most people respond by studying even harder. They try to force their way through the problem. But learning doesn't work like weightlifting. You can't simply push harder and expect better outcomes. The people who learn fastest understand something different. They focus on efficiency instead of effort. Let me show you what that means. Imagine you're trying to fill a bucket with water. Most people think the solution is adding more water. But what if the bucket has holes? No matter how much water you pour in, it keeps leaking out. That's exactly what happens when you study without understanding how memory works. You're constantly adding information, but your brain keeps losing it. So the real goal isn't pouring more information into your head. The goal is plugging the leaks. The first leak is passive learning. This is where almost everyone gets trapped. Reading pages without thinking, watching videos without engagement, highlighting entire chapters, taking notes that are never reviewed. These activities feel productive, but feeling productive and being productive are not the same thing. Have you ever finished reading an entire chapter, only to realize you barely remember anything? That's passive learning in action. Your eyes moved across the page, but your brain never truly interacted with the information. The fastest learners do something completely different. They force their brains to retrieve information. Instead of asking, "Did I read this?" they ask, "Can I explain this?" That simple shift changes everything, because memory is not strengthened by input. Memory is strengthened by retrieval. Every time you force yourself to remember something without looking at the answer, your brain builds stronger neural connections. Think of it like strengthening a muscle. The challenge creates growth. The struggle creates retention. This is why self-testing consistently outperforms rereading. And it's one of the easiest ways to learn faster immediately. After learning something new, close the book, turn off the video, and try explaining the concept from memory. You'll quickly discover what you actually know and what you only think you know. That distinction is incredibly powerful. But there's another mistake slowing people down, and it's hidden inside the way they organize their learning. Most people consume information in large blocks. They study one topic for hours before moving to the next. At first, this feels efficient, but appearances can be deceiving. Imagine a basketball player practicing only free throws for 6 straight hours. Would they improve? Probably. But would they improve as quickly as someone who alternates between shooting, dribbling, passing, and defensive drills? Not likely. Because the brain learns through contrast. When you mix related skills together, your brain becomes better at recognizing patterns and differences. Scientists call this interleaving. And it's one of the most underused learning techniques in the world. Instead of studying one thing endlessly, rotate between related subjects. If you're learning a language, switch between vocabulary, listening, speaking, and reading. If you're learning business, alternate between marketing, sales, psychology, and communication. The slight difficulty created by switching topics actually improves long-term retention. It feels harder, but harder often means better. That's another lesson the fastest learners understand. Easy learning feels good, effective learning often feels uncomfortable. The next strategy might surprise you even more, because it involves studying less. Yes, less. Most people believe concentration is unlimited. It isn't. Your brain operates in cycles. Attention naturally rises and falls throughout the day. Trying to force continuous focus for hours is like trying to sprint a marathon. Eventually, performance collapses. Elite performers know this. That's why many of them work in focus bursts rather than endless sessions. They concentrate intensely for short periods, then they rest, then they return refreshed. This works because learning doesn't happen only when you study. A huge portion of learning happens when your brain processes information afterward. During breaks, during walks, during sleep, during moments when you're not actively thinking about the subject. Your brain continues organizing information behind the scenes. It's like planting seeds. You can't speed up growth by digging them up every 5 minutes. You need periods of recovery. That's why strategic breaks often outperform non-stop effort. And speaking of recovery, we need to talk about something many people ignore: sleep. Because sleep is not the enemy of productivity, it is one of the most powerful learning tools available. Every night, your brain strengthens important memories and removes unnecessary information. It's essentially a biological upgrade process. Yet millions of people sacrifice sleep to gain extra study hours. Ironically, they end up learning less. Imagine spending hours downloading valuable files onto a computer, but never saving them. That's what poor sleep does to learning. The information enters your brain, but much of it never becomes permanent. If you want to learn faster, protect your sleep like it's part of your study routine, because it is. Now let's discuss another reason some people learn at extraordinary speed. They focus on understanding instead of memorization. This distinction is huge. Memorization creates fragile knowledge. Understanding creates flexible knowledge. When you memorize information, you remember isolated facts. When you understand information, you see relationships, and relationships are easier to remember. For example, imagine trying to memorize thousands of puzzle pieces individually. It would be exhausting. But if you can see the completed picture, every piece suddenly makes sense. That's what understanding does. It organizes information into meaningful structures. This is why the fastest learners constantly ask questions. Why does this work? What causes this? How does this connect to what I already know? Every answer creates another connection, and every connection strengthens memory. In other words, knowledge compounds. The more you understand, the easier future learning becomes. That's why experts often learn new information faster than beginners. Not because they have superior brains, but because they already possess stronger mental frameworks. Each new idea has somewhere to attach itself, and there's one final strategy that separates average learners from exceptional ones. They teach, even when nobody is listening. Think about it. When you prepare to teach something, your brain approaches information differently. You look for gaps, you organize ideas, you simplify complexity, you anticipate questions. All of these processes deepen understanding. This is why many teachers know their subjects so well. Teaching forces clarity, and clarity accelerates learning. You don't need an audience to use this strategy. Pretend you're teaching a friend. Record yourself explaining concepts. Write simple summaries. Create imaginary lessons. The act of teaching transforms information into understanding, and understanding transforms learning speed. Now, let's put everything together. If you want to learn faster without studying more, stop measuring success by hours spent. Start measuring success by retention and understanding. Replace passive consumption with active recall. Use self-testing instead of endless rereading. Mix subjects instead of studying one thing for hours. Work in focus sessions instead of marathon study blocks. Protect your sleep. Prioritize understanding over memorization. And teach what you learn. These changes may sound simple, but simple does not mean weak. In fact, the most powerful improvements are often the simplest. The people who learn fastest are not superhuman. They don't possess secret intelligence. They aren't born with magical abilities. They simply understand how learning actually works. And once you understand that too, everything changes. Because the goal isn't to study more. The goal is to learn better. Imagine where you could be 6 months from now, if every hour of learning became twice as effective. Imagine mastering skills faster, building confidence faster, creating opportunities faster. The difference between where you are today and where you want to be may not require more effort. It may simply require a better strategy. And that's great news, because strategies can change immediately. Starting today, starting now. The next time you sit down to learn something new, remember this. Your brain is not a storage container waiting to be filled. It's a living system designed to build connections. The more intelligently you work with that system, the faster you grow. Not by studying more, but by learning smarter.